I still do have a few strength goals that I really sort of want to tick off the list. So one is a 1,000-pound squat, and the other one is the Australian record for the heaviest ever yoke carry, which currently sits at 620, but I'd like to go a little bit heavier than that. You know, Thor's a guy who had a lot of momentum behind him, you know, and that momentum is his income as well. And I think that's the one thing that people aren't taking into consideration, not just Thor, but any one of these athletes out there. You know, if they're not competing and they're not doing things, they're not creating a spectacle, people stop caring who they are, and that directly affects their income in terms of how much they can market themselves. Training focus is really about, you know, spending this year building work capacity, fixing up mobility issues, build back to those heavier weights. If I wanted to be completely honest, could I get back under those heavy loads right now? 100% no. Does it mean that I won't be able to? 100% no.
Alrighty, everybody, welcome back. Today I've got a repeat guest. I've got Dan Macri back with me now, obviously on a Zoom call here because can't be too close to each other at the moment. But that's all right. Basically, a few months ago, Dan got in touch with me and he wanted to drop a few kilos and get into a bit better shape. Basically, when he made that decision himself, he was about 188 kilos. Now, keep in mind, people, Dan is incredibly strong. He is the one that got me into Strongman. So if you can't remember that, go back and watch the Strength Institute podcast with the pair of us because we've known each other for a long time. And anyhow, he decided he wanted to drop a bit of weight. He was 188 kilos. When he came to see me, he was in the low 180s. And basically, we wrote up a bit of a nutrition plan and a bit of a training plan for Dan to follow along with or to go hand in hand with the training plan that he was already doing. And now he's all the way down to 164-ish kilos. So basically lost, you know, around 23, 24 kilos from your starting point, which is huge. So well done, firstly. And secondly, Dan, no worries, is future goals. Where to from here? Why don't you tell the people what the original goal was?
Look, original goal still stands. Idea is to get the body weight down to about 150-ish. Even though, once again, going back to the last podcast a little bit, retired from competing in strongman competitions start of 2018, just due to accumulation of injuries, but I still do have a few strength goals that I really sort of want to tick off the list. So one is a 1,000-pound squat, and the other one is the Australian record for the heaviest ever yoke carry, which currently sits at 620, but I'd like to go a little bit heavier than that. So they're kind of the first lot of goals, and then depending on how they go, we can move on from those. Regardless of those strength goals still being there, and often a lot of those goals are associated with heavier body weight. Let's just talk purely training to start off with. I really felt that the body weight that I got into and the body composition I was at was actually preventing us from doing the biggest thing I needed to do to actually get close to those goals, which was put in enough work and training time and recover from that efficiently enough to actually start progressing forwards. So talking from a purely performance standpoint, it's take one step backwards to take two steps forward, I guess, is the best way of looking at it. And the biggest thing I found performance-wise more than anything else at the moment is my work capacity is way higher than what it has been probably the last 5-6 years. Aside from that, let's just talk, you know, longevity and long term here. There's life outside of lifting. I was meant to be getting married May this year. You were meant to be one of my my groomsmen for that, and you obviously still will be in the future. But you know, there's other stuff going on, and I just wanted to feel healthier, be healthier. You know, you get tired of, you know, feeling inflamed, feeling sore, feeling out of breath all the time, and just generally kind of feeling a lot shittier than what you really should, you know. But at the time I was just over 30 years old. So, you know, wanted to get myself just being generally healthier and focus on that for a bit as well. And, you know, want to have kids one day, so I want to be able to run around and play with them rather than, you know, getting out of breath after taking a couple of steps.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, if you're 100% right to say that when you drop a lot of weight, your workload can really, or your capacity can really increase, because when I dropped 20, 25 kilos after rugby, it was a noticeable difference. And I was only going from 120-ish down to, 100-ish, or 120 down to 90 something. So you're dropping from, in the 180s close to 190. Goal is to get down to 150. And then from there, who knows? So it's a huge amount less stress for your body to be carrying around daily, just as a general health point. But really, what I was interested in is how it's going to affect your performance as well. So we all know that it's going to be doing wonders for health markers. Then the next thing is performance markers. And you yourself said sort of one step back to two steps forward. And it's something that I noticed that when I would see you training is that the breaks between sets. Now, albeit you're lifting huge weights, squats, upwards of 400 kilos or in recent time, I'm not sure exactly, but I've seen squats of over 400 kilos from you. So, but really long breaks in between. And your session only would be consisting of a couple of sets or a handful of sets of very low reps, very heavy weight. And that's good to get the CNS firing and to really try to get that stimulus. But you do need to have volume of sorts to be able to build that muscle as well.
All right. So in terms of the exact performance, in terms of how much recovery has changed things up, I can give an actual direct measure, funnily enough. So going back to 2017 was when I was, 2016 was when I was actually preparing to try and break that Australian yoke record. Part of what I had as part of the training plan, because it's the yoke record is just a short run. It's 10 feet to keep in line with what they do with the heavy yokes at the US Arnold. So about 3.5 meters roughly. What I was planning to do to try and build work capacity was have one session going heavy, working up to 3 heavy runs, one session staying lighter and working on building a working capacity. Because realistically, I figured I would have to get, to get up to that weight, I'd have to do roughly 10 or so runs. So I wanted to have a good base there to be able to have the capacity to get up to doing that. The first session I had planned for that was 10 runs of 5 meters at 340. When I first did that session a couple of years back, it took me a little over 2 hours to complete the session. I did literally the same session plus accessory work and everything else last Saturday, and that yoke component took me about 40 minutes.
Wow. So that's a huge difference.
So, yeah. In all honesty, could I have done it quicker? Probably. It was one, a choice to take it longer, and two, working with another training partner, working in a different weight. So had to, adjust weights around there as well.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, that's fantastic. And like you're saying, if it takes 10 runs to get up to that record breaking weight, you can't be gassed by run 7 or 8. You have to have the gas tank to be able to get to run 10 and then actually do it.
100%. Yeah, and it's like I said, it feels so much easier than go on and do the accessory work, even just do things up to pack up around the gym. With that particular session, obviously training at the home gym at the moment, the yoke that I have also doubles as a squat rack, and it finished on one side of the gym, and all the plates and everything end up back on the other side of the gym. And I just decided it would be easy just to do an 11th run and carry it back over the other side of the gym as opposed to deload everything and take it back. So, that was also nice to be able to get that out as well.
Nice one.
In terms of pure performance, I haven't really tested myself properly under a huge amount of load yet. The training focus is really about, spending this year building work capacity, fixing up mobility issues, working back, strengthening up all the areas which I'm weaker in to build back to those heavier weights. If I wanted to be completely honest, could I get back under those heavy loads right now? That 400-ish sort of mark? At the bottom end of the squat, 100% no. Does it mean that I won't be able to? 100% no. I know I'll be able to get back to those and far beyond that, because now I have the tools to train more for it. The biggest thing that I have noticed is my waist measurements come down really significantly. So my starting waist measurement was about 160 centimeters. It's now down to about 144. So pretty significant drop there. If you're talking total surface area, it's roughly a 20% decrease in surface area, what happened with that greater amount of belly mass is that would, when I get to the bottom of the squat, that would all bunch up and create kind of a big cushion that would rest on the top of my legs and help hold me more upright in the squat. So it's not that necessarily muscles in my back are weak, it's that they're not used to activating at those ranges. So when I'm under, yokes of 400 plus and standing upright, or the top end of the squat, doing work that's top end and dominant, no issues at all. But getting to that bottom quarter of the squat, those muscles just aren't used to, to having to actually work 100% in those ranges. So it's a matter of stepping back, retraining everything, and building back up, to be able to get back under those weights again.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's important as well, because there's not an immediate timeline. You have a goal to get these records, and you have a goal to bring your weight down and get more healthy. But it doesn't have to be done in 2 weeks. It doesn't have to be done in 2 months. And that's important because a lot of people might not know that strength athletes really mature in age, and that it takes time to build strength. All the best guys were a little older. It's not like you peak like a sprinter in their early 30s or late 20s or something like that. Like rugby players or footy players. It's a long game. It takes time to build that muscle.
Exactly.
So it really will pay a huge amount of benefits to take a step back, sort out injuries, sort out issues where you might have muscular imbalances. And once that's all figured out, then build everything back up. And that's going to open a lot more doors for you, I think, in the long run.
That's exactly it. That's the plan. And I think the biggest thing is with dropping this extra weight, it's been eye-opening to going, all right, here is a weakness that you had. And long story short, if I hadn't have identified that weakness, that most likely could have been what could have been the undoing and actually trying to progress further on and, achieve these goals. It's an interesting thing. I mean, the biggest thing I've noticed is through having to get these muscles to work harder, even with doing a yoke carry, I used to get, some amount of lower back pain or discomfort, not necessarily even during the session, but post-session. Now these muscles are learning to activate more. It's probably been the first time in, probably since my first year doing strongman, so we're talking close to 10 years here, that I'm doing, I'm doing yoke carries without any pain whatsoever. Squats I'm not actually getting any pain as in joint pain from, but I am getting, some muscular discomfort from muscles having to work harder than what they've liked to over the last, 4 or 5 years. Yeah. But like I said, you see the opportunity in it. It's an opportunity to get better and to be better in the long run.
Absolutely. And I guess that leads me to another question is that have you changed your squatting technique? I mean, you've already identified that you physically are not having the same leverages and dimensions to be bracing off of, like, torso to legs and everything like that. So have you had to change your technique, or are you just now strengthening those muscles through a different range of motion, but the same technique?
Technique is relatively similar, but obviously some alterations have been made. I used to squat with a fair bit of a wider stance, and part of that was, well, one, I could get away with it, and two, just having that larger belly and circumference area, I had to go wider in order to achieve any sort of depth. Now it actually feels better being in a little bit narrower. I mean, I always have had a wider hip base and naturally go to a, what would be considered a wide squat stance. It's sort of just outside of the shoulder width, but I have definitely brought it in pretty significantly from where it used to be.
Yeah. Okay. But the yoke more or less the same?
Yoke's pretty much the same. I mean, I guess I've just gotten crisper in the more recent years, just in terms of taking a few extra seconds to brace and tighten up my upper back a bit more. But the stance is pretty much the same. It's just minor things. Like I used to, be lazy and pick up heavier weights out a lot wider, but now I'm just making an effort to pick them up a bit narrower, and that's just more efficiency than anything else.
Fair enough. Now, with the yoke, you laid out a couple guidelines, like you want it to be done over 10 feet, 10 feet, 10 yards, 10 feet.
10 feet.
10 feet.
Yep.
So yeah, about 3.5 meters, which is in line with the Arnold Classic or the Arnold US, heavy yokes. But with your squat and with the yoke, when you do run it, do you have to do it in competition? Are you wanting to get these seen by, officials within the sports, like in an actual powerlifting meet or a strongman competition? Or is it just a personal quest for you at this point where you don't care if it's at the gym, in the backyard, or at a competition? You've done it and you can film it and you're happy with it. What's the standard for you?
Look, ideally competition, but once again, that comes down to timing and everything else aligning. Let's be honest. Competition is the goal. I mean, I've always wanted to compete, and that's the biggest thing that I miss doing. And even though it's a more limited capacity to what I ideally would be competing in, that still is the ultimate goal. Like I said, once I get these goals, honest truth, and it's the way all athletes are, you then plan to progress on to the next goal. What's the next goal after a 455 squat? Well, then you start going, well, what's the Australian record? You get the Australian record and, maybe get real brave and stupid and think, what's the world record? It's just a progression. You sort of look, what is the next I can do? What's the number I can achieve? But, these are the 630 and the 455 or the 1,000 pounds. They're numbers that I've had, since I started strength sports. So let's get those done first, and I can start planning for the future after that. But like everyone, you want it to be done in a comp. The exact setting of that comp, I'm not super concerned about. Like it's not like it has to be a world level recognized comp or anything, but it needs to be in front of a judge, and and ideally, I'd prefer it to be with somewhat of a crowd. I like to make strength sports are for the public. They're good to go out to entertain people. It's entertainment. So
be a spectacle
in front of a crowd. Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that's interesting. I will happily be there and give the old back slap, rile you up, get you ready to go. Back in like the old garage training days in 2010 and 11.
That's funnily enough, man. That's what it feels like training again now. I absolutely love it. Like I've missed training at home.
That's it. So I mean, I'm assuming you have your home set up now that the coronavirus has shut the gyms you normally train at. See, there you go. Perfect. A lot of people would be jealous of your setup.
I think so.
Yeah.
I've been accused of hoarding all the bumper plates in Perth already. So,
well, that's not your problem. Is a question for you with the yoke. What sort of rules do they have? I mean, for those that are listening that have limited knowledge on strongman competitions and strongman events, there's a heap of different ways that you can run an event. You can run an event that's time-based only. You might say, hey, once you pick up the apparatus, you can't put it down. As soon as you put it down, the run's over. You might get, 3 put downs. You might, let's say, if he then moves it, one foot and then another couple feet, and then a third time he puts it down, then it's over. So what are the guidelines for your yoke?
Look, it's always an open-ended book in terms of what they do. If we're following the exact guidelines that they do at the US Arnold, it's I believe 45. It's either 30 or 45 seconds they've got to complete the run, and they've got unlimited drops. Ideally, for my own sake, I would rather just do it as one single run rather than having to pick it up several times, because that is not a fun weight to be picking up. But yeah, it's unlimited drops, and I think it's either 30 or 45 seconds for the attempt at that weight. Obviously, if it's done under a record breakers kind of scenario, sometimes the rules are geared more towards giving the athlete the biggest benefit they possibly can, but ultimately the attempt must still be made under those same sort of conditions as opposed to as part of a competition.
Sure. Now, who's the current record holder? Is that Biggie?
It is, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So it's a couple old pals.
Oh, look, we were both meant to be having a shot at it back in, I believe it was, 2016. Either 16 or 17. I'm pretty certain it was 16. And I tore my bicep my last training session before, so 10 days out from the event. So that kind of ruled me out, unfortunately. But look, it happens. So
yeah, it happens, and it's a strength sports. And when you're playing with incredibly heavy weights, injuries unfortunately happen. So I guess the important thing now is you're taking all the steps in the right direction to mitigate any potential future injuries or decrease that risk.
That's the entire plan. You know, by taking this bit of time and stepping backwards, you know, you can then plan to move forwards. And like you sort of said, it's a long-term plan. It's not, you know, 2 weeks time or, you know, 2 months time. It really is a long-term plan. All right, so if I'm happy with where the preparatory phase sort of finishes off after my wedding, it'll be sort of December 2021 that I'll look to start preparing, probably for the yoke first of all. We'll look to do that around late November, early December, depending on where we have WA Strongest Man and Woman that year, and do it as like an exhibition event to open that competition. And then the squat attempt would probably be middle of the following year. Obviously, they are complementary lifts, but I don't feel you can realistically prep for both of them efficiently at the same time, especially when it comes to skill and technique work, and especially the amount of load that needs to be dealt with in both. I mean, I think both of them work very well as hand in hand as supplementary exercises for each other, but it's you know, difficult to be maxing both out at the same time.
100%, especially at those loads. It's like, yeah, they do both work a lot of the similar muscle groups, but good luck training and peaking for yoke and a 1RM squat in the same sort of week. It's not going to happen.
Not at all.
Yeah, right. With your squat, you're saying ideally in competition as well. Are you thinking out of the mono? Are you going to walk it out? Like, what is your squat going to look like?
Look, it honestly, it would be with knee wraps, and that most probably means with a monolift. I mean, my best, you know, unofficial squat was the 410 with the cambered bar, which was walked out with knee wraps. You know, that was just in the power rack at the gym. So I mean, I'm not necessarily unable to walk heavy loads out, but just wear and tear on my body and just knees have kind of taken a bit of a beating over the years. So if I don't have to, I'll rather not. And I guess the thing is, why disadvantage yourself more than you need to? You know, if the rules of your competition state it has to be done one way, well, it has to be done that way. You know, having said that, all the squats I'm doing at the moment are walked out because I don't really have a monolift sitting in my garage, unfortunately. So maybe I'll change my mind and just decide, hey, I'm enjoying walking it out, so I will. The only sort of a detachment from that is certain federations, for whatever reason now in the rules, don't allow you to walk a squat out, which I can't figure out how that's an advantage, being able to walk your squat out. But anyway, that'll also be a factor as well. If I'm, you know, if the timing lines up that the competition I want to do doesn't allow me to walk it out, well, then obviously I won't be walking it out.
Fair enough. Well, Dan, I'm really excited to see how it continues to progress. I mean, you're down 20 some kilos. You got about 14, 15 more until you hit the first major goal. I mean, of 150. And I'm excited to see how the training continues to progress.
Appreciate that, man. I mean, look, it's been really, like I said, really eye-opening. It's probably been the last sort of 3-4 weeks where I've really begun to notice a lot of the differences that have really happened. It's funny enough, 170 kind of seems like, I guess the milestone where as soon as I started getting under 170, that's where I started noticing the biggest and most significant changes in body shape, and biggest and most significant changes in work capacity. Funnily enough, that first 18 kilos, my belt, I only took it in 1 notch, but I've taken it down 3 notches since getting under. So total of 3 notches now. So another 2 notches since getting under 170. So it's been a lot more drastic and noticeable, the changes at you know, since then. At that same point, when I got under 170, that's where I really sort of started to notice, hey, you know, certain things are having to work a lot harder than what they used to before. It kind of seemed that was a tipping point right there. So I guess that gives us a bit more insight to, you know, if I do have to regain some weight at some point, you know, in order to, you know, make the squat attempt possible, well, maybe 170 is the marker that I need to get back to, and it's a matter of taking, you know, even if it's an extra 24 months to slowly build back up to that 170 at a much better body composition, that's going to be the most optimal way to do it anyway. So absolutely. Information is key.
Yeah, 100%, mate. That's a great way to look at it. Well, Dan, thanks so much for getting back on here and having a chat with me about it. I appreciate it.
Appreciate it, man. Happy to anytime.
Thank you. Also, while I have you here, what is your thoughts and opinions on the World Strongman, whatever it's called now, allowing Thor to go for the world record 501 kilograms at his own gym with no officials there or anything, just filming it?
Look, this is my opinion. In general, no. I think records should be done at a competition with judges, with other competitors, even if it's a record breakers environment and you're the only person who's breaking that particular record. Generally, at a record breakers event, you've at least given other people the opportunity to break that record. If they choose not to meet the challenge, if they say, hey, we're going to have a record breakers for the deadlift world record at Arnold's Brazil this year, it doesn't matter, the event's redundant, who cares, at a public event this year, and anyone who wants to take up this challenge can, and Thor puts up his hand and says, I will, but then, Jerry Pritchett says he will as well, just for example, because I know he's another very capable deadlifter, but then he pulls out 2 weeks before. Well, the opportunity was there for everyone. So in general, I think it needs to be a more formal and open event. Having said that, though, we're in slightly different times right now, and probably will be for at least the next, sort of 6 to 12 months. So the alternate way of looking at it is no other strongman competitions can happen right now. So it still keeps an interest in the sport there. It keeps people focused on, these big milestone lifts and other things. It keeps these athletes in the spotlight. And the thing is, these athletes, their career is themselves, and it's how much they can market themselves. So by saying no one can attempt any lifts, you're also kind of taking away what for a lot of them is their primary source of income and way of promoting themselves. I just think the rules I think just have to be consistent for everyone. I mean, I think the Thor Eddie Hall, beef sort of going on, cops a bit more sort of spotlight, but you've also got Tom Stoltman under pretty much identical situations going for the log world record in his gym, and no one's kind of paid any attention, mainly because Zydrunas isn't sitting there getting upset that someone's attempting his world record. I think if you allow it for one person, you've got to allow everyone the same opportunity to do the same thing. Do it like a postal comp. Let everyone have the same opportunity. Do I generally think as soon as people can start getting back to international travel again, should we allow this? No. But as long as, someone can present calibrated equipment to the same standard as what someone else has, it can be verified, it can be checked, and you have an international referee there to verify it. In the time being, I kind of feel like it's okay because it kind of keeps strength sports alive. It keeps any sport alive in a time where there's pretty much no sports happening at all.
Right. Fair enough. Well, interesting take on it. This is good. I think it's a tough one because you want to obviously maintain a high standard, and the last thing you want is a bunch of sort of maybe asterisk records from everywhere. But at the same time, you can't just say no one's allowed to do anything.
That's kind of it. And if it was a year where World's Strongest Man was happening as it was meant to, next month, and Thor goes, hey, mind if I get Magnus around and I'll just, do a deadlift world record in my gym? No, you can't do that in that situation. But the truth is, the situation we're in now is it's unprecedented. It's not normal circumstances. So I kind of feel some allowances have to be made, even just a little bit, just to keep some interest in the sport. It's not even, you take a lot of these sports out of the limelight and people start forgetting. A lot of these things work off momentum, and Thor's a guy who had a lot of momentum behind him, and that momentum is his income as well. And I think that's the one thing that people aren't taking into consideration, not just Thor, but any one of these athletes out there. If they're not competing and they're not doing things, they're not creating a spectacle, people stop caring who they are. People stop caring who they are. They get less YouTube views, they get less Instagram, likes, and that directly affects their income in terms of how much they can market themselves, both currently and in the future. So if people have a way to create, some interest and income for themselves right now, I'm kind of all for it. And it also keeps the sport alive. It keeps up interest in the sport.
100%. Perfect. Well, you heard it here first at the Strength Institute makeshift office. Awesome. Dan, thanks very much again, mate. And I'll be chatting with you soon.
Absolute pleasure, mate. I will do. I'll speak to you soon.